that means? It means that all of you, all you teachers' pets, everybody who gets to enjoy this broadcast, you need to share, tag, go and email your friends, do everything you can, because today we're going to be talking about miracles, a course in miracles. So I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. While you guys are helping me grow the classroom. As you know, the algorithms are just so incredibly wonderful, right? So you guys get to help out to help grow the classroom. So I'm going to hit the record button. And we're going to continue our conversation. So today we're talking to Carol Howe, and we're going to learn about A Course in Miracles. Have you heard about it? Well, today you're going to learn all about it. So fasten your seatbelts because it's time to learn and grow together and dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dream. Now, as you know, there's a lot of chaos in the world. And we're hearing left and right so many different things that could be scary, other things that are just incredibly far out that we never thought we'd have to ever deal with. So I thought it's time to have a change of perspective. It is time to rewrite the programming, because that is what we do when we take our fears out of the way, so that we can turn to love, so that we can turn to whatever is going to support us, and it's based in truth. So we decided that we were going to get the best, the one and only Carol Howe. She has been a teacher, a master teacher, world-renowned, an author, and of A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you've ever heard of A Course in Miracles, but today we're going to dip our toe in so that we can start experiencing the power of love, the power of a change of perspective. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I'm so grateful that Carol Howe is here to do just that. Welcome, Carol, to the classroom.
Thanks a million. I love being here. I never tire of sharing this material.
Absolutely. So share a little bit about your background and what led your journey to A Course in Miracles.
Well, I can remember back when I was a very little girl, before I even went to school, I kept thinking something's missing. Something's not right here. And I mean, it's not like it was an abusive family. Of course, I grew up in the era when children were to be seen and not heard, which was a terrible era from a parenting point of view. But nevertheless, it was like I just knew something was missing. So from the time I was a very young girl, I was on the search. And all through high school and college, I was fortunate to be born into a metaphysically friendly family. So I was surrounded by whatever was available a long time ago in terms of philosophies or alternate healings or metaphysics or something like that. So I was born interested in this topic. It's not like an event came along that promoted this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what led you to find A Course in Miracles?
Oh, what led me to find it was, well, once I graduated from college, and I taught school and was a systems engineer with IBM for a few years. But all of the while in the background, I was searching, I was reading everything I could get my hands on, trying to answer this what's missing question, because I thought it was information, like somewhere there's some secret information that I don't have. So I had always been interested, and we had a house guest back in 1977. And by that time, I had read a lot of things and done a lot of things. But he sent us a subscription to New Realities magazine. And the edition that we got as the recipient of his gift was the edition that had the very first article about A Course in Miracles that was ever published.
Wow.
Quite a lengthy article, and it included the little short introduction to the text. And I read it, and it was like being hit between the eyes. I thought, this is for me. So I ordered it. At that time, you couldn't get it in a bookstore. And I so remember the day when that package was in 3 volumes then. So it was a little package of books. I remember holding the unopened package in my hands and knowing, with this, my search is over.
Oh, wow. What
And it
was it?
Now, that doesn't mean that it didn't take lots of years to incorporate it, but I knew this was the truth. And when I opened it, the thing that I felt, and I have heard so many people use the same language, you can feel the truth come up through the words.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible for you to find it. How old were you at the time?
Oh, I don't know, 39, 40, something like that.
So there you were in an age that now you're maybe saying, oh, this just makes sense to me. And that's what happens when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and vice versa. And so I had heard about A Course in Miracles, and I learned a little bit about the co-scriber, that you were privileged enough to learn with him. It was Dr. William Thetford, and he co-scribed A Course in Miracles with Dr. Helen Schuckman. So share a little bit about how did this encounter happen, and how it was that someone who was a very shy introvert would become such close friends with you.
Well, thank you for asking, because it's just such a bizarre, meant to be story. Somehow I received a flyer from the American Humanistic Society, which I did not belong to. I have no idea how I got on that mailing list. And it indicated that Judith Scutch, who was responsible for the publication, she and her husband had the Foundation for Inner Peace, that she was going to be in Denver, which is where I lived at the time, at one of the university campuses, and that she would be making a presentation. And the flyer also said that Bill Thetford would be there, although he was not going to speak. Well, I wouldn't have missed that for anything in the world. So my husband and I drove across town. What the brochure did not say is that they had this thing set up outside. It's like they had set up an outdoor stage, a proper stage and everything else, and all the seats were outside. Well, this was in May. Well, in Denver, in May, outside, it can still be cold. So I didn't go prepared for an outdoor event. I just had a little lightweight sweater. So after an hour and a half or so, I was freezing, and I thought, I'm leaving. So I got up and I just looked for the nearest door, walked in the nearest door to just warm up. And here was a tall, handsome man standing there all by himself. And I knew that was Bill Thetford. So I went up and indicated my appreciation for this. And I was simply stunned. I was just kind of stunned by the sense of connection with him that I was when I picked up those books. In other words, it had a very big feeling, and we only talked about 10 minutes, and then apparently they ended early and the doors opened and everybody else came crashing inside to try to also keep warm. So I drove home in almost complete silence. I'm rarely silent. So I just didn't know what to say about this. And I didn't know what to do about it. I mean, what's to do about that? So somebody called me because this was such a long time ago and only a few people knew about the course, but I was sort of the go-to person in Denver. I guess people knew that at that point. And somebody called and said, did you know that Bill Thetford is moving from New York to Tiburon? And I go, well, where's Tiburon? It's like part of the San Francisco Bay Area, but I didn't know that. So it's like, okay, so I just tucked that away. And then a very dear friend who was, we had started a tiny little study group together. He was a Rolfer, a deep tissue massage therapist. And he said, called one day and said, I'm going to Tiburon to do some advanced work out there. Well, all of a sudden, this focus on Tiburon, and I could almost hear Bill's voice in my mind saying, come out. And I thought, what sort of weird hallucination is this I'm having? So naturally, I didn't know what to do about the voice in my head, but I did decide to write Bill via the Foundation for Inner Peace, because there was no other address, to introduce him to Jason and hope they would have a chance to get together. Well, on Halloween afternoon, I'm getting my little kids ready for Halloween. The phone rings, I answer it, and it's that gorgeous voice. He has a beautiful voice. It's Bill Thetford saying, yes, I got your letter and I would be happy to meet your friend. And are you going to come out too? And it's like, this is getting stranger and stranger.
How wonderful. And, and that started everything.
It started everything. In
That's
November,
awesome.
we found a time that worked. I went out there. He started visiting us at our house in Denver. I would go out there and stay with him. He was a gay man. And so my husband also loved him dearly, and he was not alarmed by this. And so we got to be dearest friends.
How wonderful. How wonderful to be able, the person who actually made this happen. So let's talk a little bit about, A Course in Miracle, what the purpose was. I know that it started with him. The question was, there must be another way.
Yes.
And what is that other way that he was looking for? And so if you can just catch us up with, what is A Course in Miracles, and what should we expect from doing something like this?
Okay. Well, Bill and Helen worked together. She was an employee of his. I won't get into how that happened, but it was a very contentious relationship. They were drawn to one another. They knew that somehow it was right for them to work together, but they kind of pretty much couldn't stand each other. And he was a very big deal at Columbia University. He was a world-renowned psychologist, and so on and so forth. And they were meeting with a group, and it was another hospital group, and they hated these meetings. And Bill said, you know what? I'm somehow going to change my mind about this. There's got to be a better way of living than the way we're doing this now. And he expected to be scorned by her, because that's kind of what happened. And instead, he was so surprised that she came over, and she was very sweet and said, you're right, Bill, and I'll help you find it. Mm-hmm. And shortly after, she was a very unusual and brilliant woman in her own way. She started kind of having some inner visions and kind of voices, and this went on for a little while. And in October of 1965, all of a sudden, she hears inwardly a voice that says, please take notes. This is A Course in Miracles. And she freaks out, because she did that frequently. And she called Bill and she said, I just heard this voice that said, please take notes. What shall I do? And he said, take notes, but don't read them. Don't look at what they say. Bring them in the next morning and we'll look at them together. And if they're crazy, if they're insane, if they're stupid, we'll throw them away and no one will ever know. Well, what she got that first evening was the introduction to the text. So what A Course in Miracles is really a restatement of the non-dual teachings, which have come down from ancient times, primarily in the East, the Orient, India, and so on. So it's basically restated for the Western world. And the teaching of non-duality says that the world we live in, where that appears to be made up of a whole bunch of different things and pieces, is not the whole story, that there is a unity that underlies all of this, and that our goal is to be able to access this ground of love and peace and joy and happiness, which is always present. It's not like we go get it and bring it here. It's more a case of liberating it. In other words, it's here, but we don't access it because the ego mind, the sense of personal self, takes up all the airspace, so to speak. In other words, we're so fixated on that we don't have access to the truth of our being, because the truth of our being is non-corporal. It's eternal. It doesn't have edges. It doesn't have boundaries. It's all inclusive, all of which the intellectual mind goes, I don't know what that means or why I'd even think it's a good idea. I thought I should just be self-promoting me.
Yeah.
So it's a steady, gradual reprogramming. It comes with a textbook. The lessons, there are 365 lessons. The lessons do not contain information that's to be learned. It contains, I refer to it as a spiritual technology for rewiring your brain. Because I have a computer and systems engineering background, that makes sense to me, because literally our brains are inappropriately and inaccurately wired. In other words, we believe things that just simply aren't true.
Correct.
Well, what has to happen is this incorrect programming has to be replaced with accurate programming. And that's literally what the information in the lessons, it gives you something to focus your attention on, because it doesn't take long to grow new neural pathways in the brain, but you've got to have something that you focus on that allows this to take place. So it's kind of a gradual relearning, an upgraded version, so to speak, of what it is we actually are. And it just gets better and better and better as you release falsehoods about yourself.
I love that. I love and A Course in Miracles. What is the miracle? That title. Yeah.
The course that, in fact, the two authors said to the voice, couldn't we call this something else? It just sounds a little hokey, A Course in Miracles. And the author says, no, the title is A Course in Miracles. And the miracle is defined as that shift in our perception, the shift in our wiring, so to speak, that allows us to experience the presence of love. In other words, so this is a shifting on our part, and it seems miraculous when all of a sudden things are so much better, and I have had some experiences that are impossible to describe in terms of their joy and happiness, and all of those words are very trite and weird compared to what the real experience is.
Yeah. And you know, when I first learned about A Course in Miracles, I was very curious, but at the time I had shared with you, I had met through somebody else, and the presenter was a little over my head, but I love the concept of A Course in Miracles. I've known people that have taken the course and had been doing this, but this is more than, to me, this is more than just head. This is really a practice of love. Okay, yes. Go ahead. Share a little bit more about the principles of A Course in Miracles.
The main goal of A Course in Miracles is the releasing of judgment. And it uses the more common term forgiveness. You know, it'll have lessons that say forgiveness is the key to happiness. However, everybody is so confused about what the word forgiveness means, because if you've been to Sunday school or listened to your grandmother,
Yeah, it's
you think
rewrite the program with that one. Yes, exactly.
forgiveness means somebody else has hurt you or done something unfair, and you're so supposed to just somehow be okay with that. Nobody can be okay with being treated unfairly. So what we're doing is releasing something in us. So I refer to our major goal of releasing, and what's to be released? Our own guilt. Our own guilt about what we think we have done or said that has been damaging or hurtful to ourselves or someone else. And a lot of this gets wired in before you're 3 years old. In other words, our kind of life path begins. Now, this is at the time and space level and not at a metaphysical level, until we're about 3 years old. Our left brain, which is the part of the brain that allows us to think and to conceptualize and have ideas in our minds, is offline. Because as the young of the species, we don't need to be thinking. We need to know the only thing that the young of any species needs is, how do I survive in the environment in which I find myself? So we learn instinctively. The right brain has nothing to do with thinking. It's intuition, it's instinct. It's like we learn that person or situation is uncomfortable. I back away from that. I go toward this, and so on. And in that process, in those early years when we do not know of ourselves as a person having an experience, we only know ourselves as the experience we're having. That's very important to know. And in that early mix, there are things that are helpful, there are things that are loving, there are things that are appropriate, there are things that are false, there are things that are frightening, there are things that where we feel unsafe. And out of this mix, if you will, once that left brain comes online, we start to build an ego. We start to build a sense of separate self, that I am this and not this. Now, the roots of this ego that I am literally constructing, you can call it the self-concept, you can call it the story of me, whatever it is an artificial construct. And it's going to include some things that we've learned that are correct and loving and appropriate about ourselves. Unfortunately, we also learn that erroneously, that somehow, because of this early experience, that I'm unworthy or I'm undeserving or I'm not as good as other people or I can't do this right or I don't.
Delusion. It's the delusion of self, right?
Yes, but to us, it's not a delusion. It's an actual fact. But those beliefs are incorporated in this ego and it drives us crazy. And it directs our actions and so on. And what it also tells us is that we feel very guilty. And you might say, I don't really feel all that guilty. Well, it's sitting down there like at the bottom of the 9/10 of an iceberg.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, whether you're aware of it or not, feeling guilty, feeling like you're a destroyer, feeling like you ruin things, that you've ruined yourself, is driving the quality of your life. So it's like, this is a problem. If there's stuff I don't know going on in my unconscious mind that's driving the quality of my life. So the course will say, we've got to deal with this. And the way we do it is through relating with others, because we're going to draw people into our life that are going to mirror, you can call it, they're going to mirror or trigger, they're going to give us the specifics of what we are attacking and accusing ourselves of. In other words, what we feel guilty about. So it's through our relationships that we discover what we need to let go of in ourselves.
That's beautiful. Are you basically saying you see in others who you are?
You see in others what you believe about yourself. You can't see what you are because it's not physical, but we do see in others
I get it.
what
Yeah.
we fear about ourselves. So if you go, that person is so dumb, they can't do anything right. It's like what you're getting in touch with is your own guilt and your own fear about being very dumb and not doing anything right. But the idea is if I can export my guilt onto them, then somehow I'm free of it. Except that there is a metaphysical key, which is what I offer to others is it strengthened in myself. So the more I want to see that person wrong or guilty, the more the guilt is strengthened in me. Oh dear, this is terrible. This is bad.
Yeah.
So it untangles all of that. But the key is we feel guilty. We're not an ego. We need to kind of unlearn that. And we're going to find the specifics of our misinformation about ourselves through our relationships. So the healing, the release comes through relationships.
This is, as a certified life coach, I work with a lot of this, and I use the same language and didn't even know I was using the same language. And it's so important that we understand the rewriting of the program. And I talk about this all the time. I even talk about it on my workshop. We spend a lot of time rewriting the program. I've had Bruce Lipton in the classroom. There have been so many wonderful teachers that have come on and the biology of belief. In the Course of Miracles, which is basically it's not a religion.
It's written in religious sounding language, which confuses people. In other words, it's written in the Christian language. It could have been written in a number of things. And someone asked Helen once, why is this written in religious terms and not psychological terms or Buddhist terms or something like that? And the answer she got was, the teaching of Christianity is the most misunderstood of all of our codified religions, so to speak.
Yeah.
And because it's the most in error, we might as well use it to try to correct some of the misinformation.
Yeah. And, Dr. Lorraine Day is, I don't know if you know who she is, but she is a regular teacher in the classroom. And she said that the organized church was created by Satan, because the way the God of the Bible is different than the God of the church. And I remember the first time she said that, I almost fell back on my butt, because it's just one of those things. I always accuse her of poking me in the eye. Well, she has been poking me in the eye since 2013. So, and I absolutely adore her. But some of the things that, that people are that you read, and when I do research, I look at the good, the bad, and the ugly as well, because I want to present the whole rounded of what the topic is. And so I remember the first time I ever started researching A Course in Miracle, what's the first thing you see? Cult. And you go, okay, wait a minute. What, let me look and see what this cult is talking about, which is not a cult. It is not even a religion. It is a way of life. Just like Buddhism isn't a religion, it's a way of life.
Absolutely.
And
it's ancient wisdom. If we could get it, this is not new. This is the most ancient wisdom on the planet.
Yes, it isn't. And I want all of you who are watching, I know there's many of you that are watching today from all over the world. If you have a question for Carol, please put a Q and write your question in its entirety. And after we're done with our pod class, we will have a teacher's pet corner and answer your questions. She's been generous to say that she would stick around and be able to do that. So ask your questions. And if you don't have time to stay, you can catch it later when we post it up, when it posts. Okay. So there are so many people that have their belief about A Course in Miracles, which is basically a rewriting of the program. And of course, there are people and entities that do not want us to rewrite the program, because keeping us in our ego will separate us every time. This fellowship and compassion and love towards your neighbor doesn't fit the narrative. We need to be divided, pointing fingers, and turning against the people that you should be loving, or you could love in a different way. So what are some examples that you can share how A Course in Miracles is a better way to live, where you can just start helping yourself, kind of like what I call a self-cleaning oven. Just help yourself with the kind words, with the way that you wouldn't talk to a 2-year-old like that, but we talk to ourselves in our mind the way that you wouldn't want anybody to speak to you, but we're doing it ourselves. So how are some of the ways that A Course in Miracle has changed your life and you've seen change the lives of others?
Oh, it would just take us weeks to go over all of that. But yes, it's like the self-talk. Here's the problem. These beliefs that got wired in about I'm undeserving, I'm unworthy, or I don't have the right to do this, or I can't do this, or I have to do this, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Those get wired in at a very deep survival level. As a friend of mine says, it's like the amygdala in the back of your brain has got a Post-it note on it that says, never let this happen again. Because when punishment occurred for any of these infractions when we were little, it was so upsetting and so frightening that we make sure I never do this. I always do this. So that while I'm growing this sense of personal self, I'm also growing all the defenses about how this little individual self person is going to stay safe, because we have all grown up with the idea that I'm a separate person and, I do whatever I do. And there are all these other separate people over here. I have no control over them. I don't know how they're going to treat me. So I have to be prepared for anything. That is a completely fallacious idea. Now I'm going to say something that will seem startling, which is we are the ones who determine how other people treat us. And you go, what? It's like,
no, I am not going to say what,
absolutely.
because we talk about this all the time, and this is so true. Go ahead.
Yes, it's like, and the reason why is because the communications people, and you're one of them, so I'm sure you know this, that when we're communicating with somebody, the words we speak represent possibly 7% of the total communication. And then there's another, let's say 22 or 3% that is body language, facial expression, tone of voice. But the vast 70% of whatever it is that we're conveying is our energy field. Now, you can fake what you say. You can try to control your facial expressions, although that's harder than you think. You can't hide the other 70%. And when you put yourself down and you think you're a crummy little unimportant person, this is being broadcast like those TV sets up in the airport, in the airport lobby where they just broadcast. It's like I'm broadcasting in a sense. You can mistreat me because I'm already mistreating me.
Oh, yeah. And then that person hears and obey. They come towards you. You attract like a magnet, and then they come and treat you like you think they need to treat you, right?
Yes. And more fundamentally, underneath the attracting them like a magnet, which at one level is the perfect thing to say, I'm requiring this to happen, because one of the most basic teachings of any valid metaphysical teaching is that the world of form, the world of three-dimensionality, is always an exact replica of my state of mind. So if my state of mind is small and I feel undeserving and I think people don't like me and so on and so forth, my equivalent world of form, of time and space, which is the direct mirror of it. And if people learn only one thing, it's the futility of trying to make change in the world. The world of form is the effect. You can't change an effect. You can only change it at the causation level. And that is internal, invisible. It has to do with, where do I focus my attention? And you
You
can't.
are speaking my language. You are just like everything on me is like going ding.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, then see if you go stand in front of your bathroom mirror, and I have on this green thing, and I could plead with my mirror. I hate that green sweater. Take it off and please put on a pretty red thing like you've got on. And it's like the mirror is impervious to my pleas. It's going to reflect faithfully whatever I've got on as long as I have it on. Your world is going to do the same thing. It's, let's say you hate your job because somebody's mean to you. So you leave that job and you go to another, and it's like, darn, there's a mean person in here as well. It's like you cannot escape your state of mind. And if your state of mind is fear driven, or if it's hateful, or if it's unkind in some way, that's going to show up in your life. And there's not a thing. You could go hide in a bunker under 60 feet underground, and the heat-seeking missile will find you anyway. In other words, you cannot find safety when it's you yourself who are creating the unsafe environment.
So
we have to change our minds about
if we
us.
take that person, show us an example of how that person who feels small, who doesn't like what who they are or whatever, how can they rewrite the program? What would be the practice that they would need to do in order to rewrite the program?
Well, there are a couple. The first main thing is that's what the lessons of A Course in Miracles are for.
Sure.
They are a reprogramming device, and I have recorded for your information.
Oh, I'm going to be your new follow girl. Yeah.
All of the lessons with commentary that makes it a lot clearer.
Yes.
So the other thing is that people have probably heard the phrase, face the fear and do it anyway. In other words, because our prohibitions of what we can and can't do, they get wired into the back part of your brain at that survival level. Let's say that when you were little, I'm going to give you an example of my own.
Okay.
When I grew up, everybody had to be nice and polite and never ask for anything and never say no, and kind of just be this unobtrusive, unoffensive little person.
Yeah.
So, but the key was never offend anybody. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. And so we build the defense. We make sure that we're always polite and blah, 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 which sometimes leads to being inauthentic, being manipulative, not telling the truth.
Sure.
Because sometimes you want to smash somebody over the head. Literally, I mean figuratively, if not literally. So a long time ago, we'd started an attitudinal healing center in Denver based on Jerry Jampolsky's work in California. We were one of the very early centers. And I was teaching some classes there, and this background is important. Before the course ever came along, I was a very public figure all through high school. You know, I was the president of the senior class and the cheerleader, and all that went on in college. And I was used to being out front speaking, no problem. Then I taught high school, I taught college. It's like, if there's anybody who knows how to be comfortable speaking, it's me. But this guy calls and said, we would like for you to come do a presentation to our Course in Miracles group. And this was off in an auditorium someplace. And there were maybe 125 people there. No big deal. But for some reason, this apparently was the time when I was going to have to deal with this prohibition built into my being was, you can never offend anybody. So to my total embarrassment and humiliation, I walk up the steps to present my evening event, and I was overcome with such fear. I couldn't stand up on my own legs. Wow. I had to sit in a chair. And I tell you the other stuff, it's like, this is not fear of speaking in front of somebody. And in a couple of minutes, I kind of get my bearing, but it was like walking up those steps was like being led to being burned at the stake. There was that level of distress. What I realized is at that moment, I was facing a fear of offending people, because A Course in Miracles is very offensive to a lot of people who don't understand it, who don't know where it comes from, who don't know what it's for. Now, here's the important thing to hear, because all of us have got something that we're afraid of doing or saying, and we accommodate ourselves. You can't do that. If you're going to be free, you've got to do. Now, that doesn't mean if you're afraid of jumping out of an airplane that you should jump out of an airplane. I'm talking about those things that impact your life. Now, here's the thing. I had spent that first 40 years or something of my life being the accommodating person and making sure I never offended anybody. I break through this at great distress to myself for 5 or 6 minutes, and it was gone. It was gone, never again. Now, I don't go around offending people on purpose, but you know what? If they're offended by anything I say or do or believe, it's like, be my guest. Your offense is your problem and not mine. It's not my intention for you to be offended, but if you are, then you get to look at what that's all about for you.
Well, is there a place, is it, I mean, and you may not intentionally tend to offend, but perhaps it was tough for the person to hear it. And I would probably say, I'm so sorry that you feel this way. What would, of course, the miracle say that?
Of course, but primarily in all of these years, I have never had anybody come up to me after that and say, you have so hurt my feelings and you're so offensive and you're so everything. It's sort of just
because you got rid of it.
It just sort of doesn't occur. Obviously, if we unintentionally say or do something and they indicate that their feelings are hurt, then of course you would go, oh, I had no intention. I'm here for you. I'm so sorry that that you heard that or feel that or something like that.
That was not my intention.
Absolutely not my intention. And I'm here for you 100%.
But the fact that you were fearing offending somebody,
yes.
that was manifesting because, and what I've learned from meeting Bruce Lipton and learning from him as well, is that the brain doesn't know don't or do, fact or fiction. It doesn't know that it's angry at somebody else. It assumes it is you. The brain also plays a huge part, and we don't know about that. So if you're saying don't offend, what's happening in the body is offend, because the fear of it. Because of the fear of it, you're focusing on what you don't want as opposed to being kind and loving.
That is the problem with defenses, because you were focusing on what you don't want. Correct. In other words, it's like in the defenses that we build against being insulted or being whatever, that basically ensures that you will have that experience. In other words, it's like defensiveness always backfires. And
doesn't it?
It does. And so being open is the best guarantee that your life will unfold in the best, safest way. So you can see the unlearning of the givens, like everybody knows this. In fact, you were speaking of some church things earlier. It's like the Jesuits back in medieval times were known for saying, give us a child until he's 6 and we've got him for life. They understood about the power of that early programming right from the beginning.
Wow.
And we need to recognize that nothing has happened to us except we have, in a way that we had no idea was happening, we've accumulated guilt. And most of us, especially if you start to read the course like I did, it's like, well, I don't think I especially feel very guilty. Oh, well, as I say, it's buried. It's not normally, no, we might feel a little bit about that, but the belief that we have fundamentally destroyed ourselves, that we are destroyers, is often never recognized in a person's life. However, it is clearly impacting and affecting and influencing everything that happens. It's why you've got to get this uprooted.
Absolutely. And I had mentioned, yes, I do research. I know the meditations that Carol is speaking of, from 1 to 366 or 65 uh, of
That's,
her coach meditations that
yeah.
she has for the course. I started listening to them, and it's you do it one day at a time. And so I just wanted to share that, that I want to encourage all of you that it's so important that the conversation not end here, that you have two more friends, if you're watching for the first time, two more that you can use the resources for. So for me, I want to encourage you to go to whenyounneedafriend.com. While you're there, please become a subscriber, because I've mentioned, like right now, my website is down. I have no idea why that is happening, but there's a lot of things going on in the world, and we just want to we're working on getting that up and running. But go to whenyounneedafriend.com, please subscribe, so that we know that, so if anything happens to the classroom, where to go to. You can email me at lily@whenyounneedafriend.com. While you're there, check out my social media. We're, right now we're live on Facebook and YouTube, but we'll be uploading on BitChute. So go ahead and like, follow, and subscribe to all the social media as well, so that you know who's in the classroom. And that's what we do. When you become a subscriber, you'll get everybody's links, like the link for today's teacher. And so while you're there, please check out my sponsors like Keep Me Safe Organics, beauty products from head to toe that I use. You get discounts and everything when you go to my my website for my subscriber or my affiliate page as well. First Alternative Therapy, the Pharmacy in Merritt Island, Right Way Health and Wellness. Dr. Grammath is coming next week as well. B3 Science, so that you can grow muscles half the time with half the weight. There's so many different ways that you can support my sponsors, like they're supporting the classroom. So figure out how you can do that. Last but not least, you can become an enrolled student of the classroom, and make sure that you can donate $1 or $1,000 a month, or your time or your talent. Whatever you can do to help grow the classroom would be greatly appreciated. Now, today's teacher is Carol Howe, and you can find her in carolhowe.com. And I know that she has so many different ways that you can grow and rewrite the program. If you go to carolhowe.com, you'll be able to learn. Or if you go to whenyounneedafriend.com, well, when it's up and running, click on her link and you'll be able to go to her website as well. So, Carol, what are some of the things that you're doing now that people could benefit from learning more of the Course in Miracles?
Well, right now we've got 4 different online programs they're not Zoom programs like this. They're professionally produced, filmed programs, and so on and so forth. 2 others are filmed. One is almost finished, and then we've got to edit the other one, and so on. So it's like that goes on at whatever rate my partner is able to get that done. But 4 of them are up. I also have just finished, I'm in the last throes of finishing doing an audio book of Never Forget to Laugh, which is the biography of Bill Thetford, which people love. And I've enjoyed that greatly. I've been meaning to do it for 10 years. And all of a sudden last month, it's like, well, now is the time to do it. So.
Absolutely. There's no other time than now. I want to read a question. We have about 10 minutes remaining of the podcast, and we'll answer any questions. Make sure you type in a Q. That way I know that you've asked the question. So this one was very creative and sent it to my text. So they worked twice as hard to get the question out. So it says, hello, Carol. I'm going to read it live. I'm not even editing this. So hello, Lillian and Carol. So great to hear Carol's teaching today. I've been on a spiritual path for many years. It's been an amazing journey, but I am at the point where I feel truly stuck. I've taken all of Carol's classes, and I've also studied many other teachings. Question: why is it so hard to forgive ourselves? It feels almost elusive. I have one life challenge that is preventing me from moving forward. Why is that?
Well, we presume that the life challenge is a somebody in your life. In other words, it's always going to be a person. But we've got to see what it is that the person is doing. And I'm going to make a kind of a little diagram for you. It's like we've got our conscious mind here with whatever's in it. Underneath is your unconscious mind that has a whole lot more in it, and we don't know what's there by definition, including our own self-destructive guilt about assorted things. Now, if we don't know what that is, we cannot address it clearly. So over here on the side, if you can imagine a little diagram, comes a person. It may be a situation, but the situation is going to usually devolve down to underneath it, a person. And and we use language like, this person makes me so upset or afraid or whatever. No, they don't. Remember, upset is internally generated in my own brain. So it's like, well, then what function are they serving? This person that I don't like for whatever reason, or that I'm afraid of, is an exact mirror. It's an exact replica of what I accuse myself of being the perpetrator, so to speak, in some other situation. And so the important thing to realize is we think we hate ourselves and each other for words or deeds. Words and deeds are not the issue, because you know why? The moment a word or a deed is spoken, it ceases to exist. It goes up in smoke. I only have the experience of right now. But what has happened with my person over here who has triggered some stuff in me is it's bringing into my awareness one of those beliefs that got wired in when I was so young. I didn't know it was getting wired in, where I feel like I'm unworthy or I'm undeserving or I don't have a right to ask for what I want, those very painful things. And once I can define, I can see that there's a corollary between this person and what I accuse myself of, then I need to get to, I'm the one who believes I'm no good. I'm the one who, therefore, this is very important, and you already know this, but a lot of people don't.
Oh, no.
That belief of I'm undeserving or I'm unworthy is an assault upon my sense of self. It causes my stress response to turn on. Just as if I'm being chased by a lion in the woods, it's going to turn on the stress response because the body is being threatened. Or if you're standing up speaking to somebody and you get scared because you've never done that, your kind of ego sit. But this is the same kind of threat. Now, what happens when the stress response is turned on? The brain has been signaled there's danger. Well, having somebody remind me that I'm no good or that I'm undeserving or that I'm guilty is like a threat to the sense of self. When the stress response turns on, there's about 1,200 different chemicals that are dumped into the body immediately, changing the body chemistry, because all of that is taken up into receptor sites, into all of the cells of the body, not just some, but so I've got 1,200, as some people would call it, death hormones, are now in the body. Listen carefully. It's that chemistry in the cells of the body that creates our emotions, that creates our fear and our grief and our despair and our horror and our upset. So my person over here doesn't do anything to me because they can't get inside my brain and turn on the stress response, but they are so accurately pushing a button that is getting me in touch with, I'm no good, I'm undeserving, and so on. And that belief is a threat to the organism. And once you can do a little reverse engineering and realize why I really hate that person is because I feel so small around them or whatever, that this is going to allow you to go, okay, now I see exactly what is my responsibility to change my mind. How's anybody else going to change my mind about how I'm afraid I'm undeserving? This is my fear, my belief, my work to do. And this person has been a collaborator. As a friend used to say, the SOBs are sent to save you. The people we don't like are collaborating with us to ultimately get to the real culprit, the belief that I'm an unloving, undeserving, incapable person, which is the lie of the century.
Absolutely. And those are some of the things that we talk about in my workshop from September. It's called the I am the solution. The I am is the God in us. And the
Yep.
solution is the acronym to put it all together so that we can work in harmony with our creator. And our next workshop, the New Truth series, I am the solution, will be September 17th through 19th. So I hope that some of you will decide to join. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com, check that out. We also have some studies that we've done as well. I want to encourage you to check them out with Dr. Lorraine Day. But okay, so you talked about the concept and it was beautiful. You had me there at the edge of my seat, living every moment. I've said those things to myself in the past as well. And so what is the practice to get you from that fear to that love?
That
What
is
do you
an excellent
say to
question, because once I've discovered, I really don't think I'm any good. I really don't think I can ever get past X in life, whatever the limiting,
Belief.
hurtful
Yeah.
belief is. That's what the lessons are to undo, because the lessons will say, you know, I am as God created me. I am a loving presence. So like whatever all the words are, not only doing the lessons, but it's our job to, because we came into this situation. I wish we had 6 hours, but of course,
I know. Well, we'll have you come back. We'll
we
continue
brought
to.
with us these beliefs in sort of handed out scripts to our parents, so we would grow up with this issue to deal with. It's my job to go, you know what? I absolutely am deserving. I need to just sit in a chair in my house and say out loud, I have a right to be here just the way I am. It's like, I've got a lot to offer. I need to start to think about myself in absolutely opposite terms from what I took for granted. And the reason why I have to do this, we speak of these as beliefs. We don't think they're beliefs. We think they're the truth. So this is an undermining, and that's why it seems so hard at first, but it's really true. I really am undeserving. It's like, no, it is not really true. And it's time for you to be your own best cheerleader.
Mhm.
And you go, I've always thought I was undeserving. Well, guess what? I'm not. And I'm going to prove to myself, I'm going to think of myself as I have every right to be here. And what's more, in order to anchor this in, I'm going to make sure that I treat everybody else and think of everybody else as how very deserving they are also. I'm going to, if undeserving is my issue, when I'm passing people on the street or I'm talking to family or friends, I'm going to keep foremost in my mind, I want them to know they absolutely deserve the best. They deserve to be listened to, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to them. They deserve to be supported, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to support them. And that way you literally replace the totally false belief masquerading as the truth that you're undeserving into absolutely I am. And the whole thing becomes a non-issue. And then you work on another one, whatever it may
Once
be.
you recognize the fear, once you recognize what it is that you don't want to see in yourself,
Yes.
you can counterbalance it with truth. Instead of
Yes.
saying I'm
And that's
small.
why the people that you don't like are specifically in your life to give you the fleshed out details of what you are condemning yourself for.
That's right.
So you now can start that healing and undoing process.
So the question I always love to ask and teach others to ask is, what is it about that person that is reminding me of the me I don't want to see?
I have a process that I call the release process.
Okay.
And I will ask people, it's like, does somebody bother you? Yes. It's like, okay, then fill in this blank without overthinking it. I can't stand my sister-in-law because she is so what are the first 2 or 3 words that just roll off your tongue about what's the matter with your sister-in-law? That gives you very specific, discrete information about what you, and then I will ask people, let's say my sister-in-law is selfish. Have you ever once in your whole life, ever behaved in a way that was selfish? 100% of the people go, well, yeah. It's like, and here's the question that starts to liberate everybody. Okay, think of a time when you were being very selfish.
Okay, so I was so engrossed in you. I let the time go by, but we're going to continue the Teacher's Pet Corner. For those of you who are listening on podcast, please join us live. Please join us on the recordings as well. These are all saved for you to watch over and over again. Thank you so much, Carol Howe. We are going to continue A Course in Miracle conversation after we're done here today. I am just thrilled that we were able to get you on. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Carol Howe wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, so let me see if there's any more questions. I love this conversation today. I love the fact that you're one of the original people that have been there from the beginning. You were taught by Bill, and I shouldn't call him Bill, but okay. So, but to have this conversation. So now I get to ask some of your questions. So, thank you, Carol, for sending me the text. And are there any, I'm looking to see if I see any more cues, because it's important that you type in a cue, because I can't read your messages unless that there is a cue. Okay. So there's just so much we don't know. Yes. And that question that you can ask, I can't stand this person because, being able to just spew out whatever it is and sit there and say, okay, when did I act this way? Mm-hmm. And there is a level in where shame and guilt is good. There's a tiny, tiny little level where shame and guilt is good because it keeps you from doing things that could harm somebody or harm yourself. I won't do that again. I can't believe I did this. But then you release it. You let it go. I'm not talking about the stuff that lingers on forever and ever and ever, right? And so with those, to be able to ask yourself that question and then rewrite the program as, now, we have been indoctrinated from childhood to say, be humble, treat others the way you want to be treated, but not everybody wants to be treated like you want to be treated. We need to understand how the other person wants to be treated and be a little bit less narcissistic. And so what I'm saying is that putting yourself first somehow becomes shameful. Putting yourself in a place. Go ahead.
It depends upon what self you're talking about putting first, because at every moment of every day, we are always making only a binary choice. Am I going to follow my ego programming, which everybody is programmed to do, which means I'm either in a mode of protecting or promoting my sense of personal self. What do I need? What do I have to do to be safe? How do I get noticed? How to, in other words, those would be or on the other hand, I can be interested in how can I be helpful? How can I join with? And that is always a function of following your intuition or your guidance, whatever you want to call it. In other words, and to recognize that at every moment of every day, there's only one choice or the other. And if I choose to be egocentric and make it all about me and promoting myself and protecting myself and so on, which we've all been taught to do. So I'm not presenting that as a crime. I'm presenting that as what we've all learned, and we need to unlearn it, because that is not a satisfactory way of living. That does not allow you to feel loved and safe and so on, because to do so, you so often are not listening to your intuition and your guidance, which is always going to lead you in a direction where there's more joy, more peace, more happiness, more helpfulness to others, a greater recognition that we are actually all one. We aren't a bunch of separate little forms thrown out there. And that, but it's very helpful to know, first of all, that those are the only two ways of being I'm ever being. It's not like I've got 10 things to choose from. Also, that this moment is the only moment there is. I need now make no reference to, what's happened in the past. That doesn't mean you'll forget how to drive home from work or anything like that, but it means I don't need to dwell on anything that's happened in the past, because the events and words do not exist. They're not stored someplace like books on a library shelf. The future is clearly not here. So I only have right now to deal with. And right now, I've got that choice before me. Either I can be self-promoting, promoting or protecting, or I can be, how can I be here for and when in this case, I say myself, I'm not talking about the ego self. It's like, how do I follow my intuition? How do I follow my guidance? How do I take my gifts? Because everybody's got their gifts. How do I take those gifts and use them for the greater good? So that whatever I love to do is also presented in a way that can be helpful to other people as well. And when I realized that inner state of mind of, I want to be very kind, not only to other people, but to me. I have to include me in who has to be treated with kindness and compassion and understanding, because to complete the sentence of a little bit before, when I think, have I ever been selfish? Yes. And then I always ask people this really important question. I love to do this. I love what I do. And that is,
I could tell.
Okay, at the time you were doing or saying this selfish thing, given the circumstances, given what was going on, given your state of mind, did you have any other choice? Did you have a menu of options? I could be generous, I could be understanding, I could be whatever else. And the answer is always no. Because at whatever time we are being selfish, or we were being selfish, there was a survival thing going on. There was some sort of a threat that the ego was perceiving. And whatever that selfish thing was that I did or said at that time seemed to be the highest and best I could do for my own sense of survival. So what we need to do is to be so compassionate with people. It's like to realize when people are doing anything from somewhat stupid things to horrible things, you'd think, how could anybody do that? Well, if we were experiencing their level of fear, their level of confusion, their level of isolation, their level of self-hatred, we would do the same thing. So that we can kind of level this playing field and go, everybody, that's me, that's all of the people that I see that I think are crazy and doing things that I disapprove of and things like that. We're all deserving of a compassionate understanding that it's that programming, it's those beliefs that are so not true that are driving us. Yes. And to hate somebody who already hates themselves, whether it's ourselves or someone else, is clearly not a helpful thing to do.
No. And in the Course of Miracles, as you start rewriting the program, you understand a little bit of dwelling. You had talked about dwelling. If you're dwelling, if the things are dwelling, and it's the past, that moment's not there. In the future, it hasn't happened. How do you talk yourself out of that? How do you become aware I've had this thought 3 times already in the last minute. How can I stop the thought and replace it with something else?
That's a very important question, because where we put our attention is key to our sense of peace, or our sense of conflict, or our sense of all's right with the world, or our sense of being threatened, or whatever it might be. In other words, we have to be in charge of where our attention is. I use an example that, back in the olden days when you had 8 horses drawing a carriage, well, you had to have a driver. If you didn't have a driver directing those 8 horses that were all harnessed up together, and you just let them do anything they want, they would go all different directions. It would topple that carriage, and you would be deader than a doornail before you knew it. So in so many cases, we have to be responsible for where our attention goes. So if I can keep remembering, that's one reason why people copy the lessons and do them, to carry them around with them, because they'll just pull out a lesson. Once you start ruminating about a past or worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. But I must remember that, and this is another very important point, we've all been taught that cause and effect is some sort of a horizontal linear thing, that stuff that happened back here causes what happens now. Absolutely, that is not what happens. Cause and effect are linear, are vertical in this moment, because there's not a past, there's not a future. Those things are just imaginary inventions. They aren't an actual anything. So right now, in this moment, I can decide, I can make that binary choice of, in this moment, I want to be all I can be. In this moment, I want to be helpful. In this moment, I want to listen to my intuition. In other words, people will say crazy things like, I'm so upset now because what if my children don't get in college next year? It's like, the idea that you can be upset now for an event that happened, we don't realize how crazy that is, because we're so indoctrinated to think that way. It's like,
somehow I always say, if worrying, you can make, if worrying was good, you could bottle it up and sell it, because it doesn't do a thing. It really doesn't.
Well, and because it's based on the totally false premise that we need to get straight about. That would be like saying, I'm going to digest the food today that I'm going to eat next month. And if you said that, people would go, well, what a stupid thing to say. You digest food and you eat it at the same time. Cause and effect are always in the same moment. So I'm free at this moment to go, what feels right now? Or, all of a sudden, I think I need to call this person. Or in other words, it's allowing yourself to be led in the moment, not by what's in it for me, but kind of, if I just focus on this moment, because cause and effect, if I'm in a loving place this moment, things are going to work out in this moment. There's going to be abundance in this moment. There are going to be answers in this moment. There's going to be a sense of support in this moment. And it's like, I don't have to undo any past or worry about any future. I just put my focus on, well, what am I focusing on now? Am I caring about myself? Am I caring about everybody, no matter what's going on? It's like, I had an occasion, and this was a fascinating conversation. I had a client call, and she said, my husband wants to join us on the call. Like, fine, okay, that's kind of an unusual request. A lot, I do couples counseling, but it's like, fine. So here's this unknown guy doing an unknown, I don't know what. And so I think I need to bring him up to speed a little bit so that anything we say will make some kind of sense. So I'm telling him a little bit about that early programming and brain functioning and so on and so forth. And I said, does that make sense? And he said, yes, I'm a senior officer with the Capitol Police, and I'm trained in hostage negotiation, and I'm a medic. So yes, I know all of that. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, so part of what happens as this unfolds is that he was in the big battle on January the 6th. but he was able, and we discussed this, he was able to do what he had to do, which was to do what he had to do. And he only sustained very minor injuries, at the same time, not hating who he's fighting, understanding that people are afraid, understanding that people believe what they believe. And I was so impressed that you could be in that situation and keep your head straight about, I'm here to be helpful. And that does not mean that I have to hate or even fear the people that I'm having to interact with in this way. Don't you think that's impressive?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Okay, so I know that we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to ask, because spirituality and my faith is very important, and I know that many of the things that we're talking about are a way. It's a way of life. It really is a way of life. Where does God and spirit play in a Course in Miracles?
It's the totality of A Course in Miracles. If we could just kind of like forgiveness is a word that confuses people, God is a word that confuses people. Because in Sunday school, if you saw some old guy in the sky with your judgment book, it's really hard to keep from personifying God when you use that word. It's really hard because it gets programmed. So if every place you use the word God, you use the word love instead, and then you realize there is nothing that's real except love and its attributes of peace and mercy and beauty and so on and so forth. So the place that love has is the only place there is, the only thing there is, the ground of our being, that of which we are an expression. So love is that all-encompassing conscious awareness that we are. And the whole point of letting go of the program, we don't go get love and bring it here as if it's escaped us in some way. It never disappears. Our job is to remove the impediments so I can experience. It would be like, I live in Florida, so I love gardening and I have a beautiful yard. But if I closed these blinds and said, oh my God, I have just destroyed my yard. It's like, I haven't destroyed my yard. Just because I've closed the blinds and I can't see out doesn't mean I've affected the yard. I've affected my ability to appreciate it and see it. So love is omnipresent. It's what everything and everyone is. It's the ground of the being of everything. And the world of form has kind of been superimposed. We've got to use language, which is inefficient, but nevertheless, we have to use it. And our job is to see that we are way more than the world of form. And we keep dropping the ideas. The Course says, well, this is about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. It doesn't say go get love because it's escaped and bring it back. It says we believe things that keep us from being able to literally see and experience and hear.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that we can have one soon again, because this is so important. You know, that love that you talk about, or love, unconditional love,
Unconditional
is
love.
what we all deserve and what we all should really rewrite the program with.
Yes, because it's what we all are. It's not just what we deserve. It's the ground of our being. It's what we are. And liberating that truth is what this is all about.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. CarolHowe.com is where you can find Carol. Thank you so much for watching today. And I hope that you will share and like and follow and do everything you can to help grow the classroom. Thank you so much, Carol, for our time together here. It's just, you've been a wonderful teacher. Thank you.
It's been lovely to be here.
Yes, yes. Looking forward to our next conversation. Okay,
Wonderful.
everybody, we'll see you. Thank you for showing up and asking all your questions and giving your comments. I will make sure that I check all the. I'm gonna let me do this real quick before we go. I am going to copy all your comments so that I can read them afterwards. But thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.